Looking for amazing finds and incredible deals? Visit Erie City Mission Thrift today. From stylish clothes and shoes to quality furniture and home goods, you'll discover something new each time while changing lives right here in Erie. It's shopping that feels good and does good. Come see us in Erie and Girard. Erie City Mission Thrift. Thrift with a purpose.
All year round, Frontier Home Products and Design has what you need to make your home comfortable and beautiful. Relax on a new timber tech deck designed by Frontier's experts. A new fireplace from Frontier Home Products Fireplace Gallery adds warmth and serenity to any home. Beauty and versatility at Frontier Home Products and Design Center, 4213 Peachtree, 5th next to the Bayfront Highway.
Frontier Home Products and Design Center. Discover a new frontier.
PA contractor number PA 039007.
Welcome to TalkErie.com's Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast. Every day, we tackle the biggest issues that the Erie, PA region faces. Stay informed and involved as we advance the narrative of Erie. Now, here's Joel Natale.
Elizabeth Stelle, is that it, Elizabeth?
Almost. Stelle.
Stelle, okay. Don't have to have the second syllable there. She is the vice president of policy with the Commonwealth Foundation. They tell us a little bit about the Commonwealth Foundation, because you guys create a lot of content and really important information for folks across from Philly to Erie and back and forth, you know.
Yeah, we are Pennsylvania's free market think tank. And what that means is we take free market ideas, we turn them into public policies. Hopefully they get enacted by the state legislature. And because of that, all Pennsylvanians are more prosperous. So we're constantly thinking about what can we do to make Pennsylvania a better place to work in, to live in, a place that people want to move to, and not a place that people want to move out of. Yeah,
exactly. And how do you think Pennsylvania is doing when it comes to being open for business? I asked the question of our mayor. I said, "Is Erie open for business?" And she said, "Absolutely." And again, she's a Democrat. She's highly sensitive to social justice issues and things, but understands that the ultimate social justice is being able to have a job.
Right. Yeah, that ability to earn your own success, have a sense of purpose, give back to your community. All those things are so important. And we look at a bunch of different metrics when we answer the question, is Pennsylvania competitive? I think the one that we often think about is migration. You know, are people moving in and moving out of the state? But another thing that we just did an analysis on this recently. We looked at how does Pennsylvania compare to the other 50 states over the past 10 years. So 2015 to 2025, how do we do? In job growth, we're 28th. Okay, so we're middle of the pack.
Yeah.
But in income growth, we're 45th.
Oh, my.
And population growth, 31st. So we definitely have some work to do. And it's not, for lack of resources or people willing to work. I think it's just more of a problem where government keeps getting in the way and keeps limiting the amount of opportunities that Pennsylvania has. And we can talk more about that. But I think what happened in the state budget in July does factor in to the opportunities that Pennsylvanians have to provide for themselves and their families.
All righty, let's talk about some takeaways that you guys have come up with. Is you're feeling like spending remains too high? Talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. The spending in this budget is far too high. And you might ask, well, what does that mean? Why is it too high? Well, simply, we are spending more than we are taking in every year. If you and I budgeted that way, we would be in bankruptcy pretty quick. But the state of Pennsylvania has a bad habit of spending more than it takes in every year and then trying to find creative ways to balance the books. And this budget, unfortunately, is no different. It did spend significantly less than the Governor Shapiro proposed. He proposed a roughly $53 billion budget. We landed around 52. So that's good, but it's not good enough. It's not going to make Pennsylvania more competitive. And so why we avoided tax hikes, the way we balanced the books was by, pulling back lapsed funds that departments didn't use, by shaking the couch cushions, if you will, looking in, under rocks for all different types of funds that had, surpluses that they were carrying. So we found a way to make it all work. We patched together this ship, if you will, but those leaks are going to come back around next year, and it's going to be this constant challenge until we get spending in check.
What is this moving $1.3 billion in Medicaid to next year? How does that work, Elizabeth?
Yeah. Well, it's really important for folks to understand when you think about state government, you probably think maybe schools, maybe roads, but the biggest expenditure in state government right now is actually human services or welfare programs. And Medicaid is the big kahuna of them all. That drives the majority of our spending in Pennsylvania. So what they did is they said, we're only going to pay 11 months of bills in the 12 months of this fiscal year. So
I wish I could do that.
Yeah, defer. And that, that's just a gimmick that they use to make the numbers look balanced when they're actually not. The good news is we cut about $1 billion from the governor's proposal on these Medicaid and welfare programs. The bad news is it's still growing at an alarming rate, faster than the revenue we're taking in. And we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we can actually protect and, get a safety net system that's sustainable.
They decided to not raid the rainy day fund. Where does that stand? How much is too much in the rainy day fund, I guess?
That's an interesting question. I've never been asked that before.
Okay.
I'm sure there is a limit, but we're not there yet.
Are we at like $7 billion or something in rainy day?
Yeah. We're over $7 billion now. So we're within what they recommend.
Okay.
They recommend, somewhere within like a month or two, maybe 3 months of spend. I think last I saw, we're around 65 days, somewhere in that neighborhood. So what that means is if, another penny, Harrisburg didn't get another penny, they could run the state government for 65 days based on the rainy day fund. That's not a bad place to be. But the challenge that we have is we need to get out of this mindset that it's just a fund we can dip into whenever we want to.
Right.
It's for emergencies. That's what it says in law. And we shouldn't play these games, talk about, well, maybe we'll just change the law and say for 1 year, you can, use these funds for ongoing expenses. We know where that goes. That will lead very quickly to no rainy day fund. And we'll be in the pickle we were during the Great Recession, where tax revenue plummeted and we had no way to pay for state services.
Let me tell you a little bit where I'm coming from with that, because, sometimes I feel like school districts, for example, really load up their rainy day funds. And I know there is a statutory limit, but I'm not sure how well that is being, managed or monitored from the state level, from DOE. And so you've got districts that, that could basically pay for a new school out of cash. And at some point, I feel like maybe we shouldn't have a tax increase every year in my district, or maybe we should give money back to taxpayers, especially those on a fixed income. That's where I'm coming from on that.
You're spot on with that, Joel. We've talked about this with school districts too, and said, okay, again, about 20% of your spending, like your whole budget, that's a good reserve fund to have. You want to have that protection in place. If the state, does something like they've done in the past where they don't pass a state budget for 6 months, you have something to fall back on, right? But this idea that we should be hoarding these reserve funds and raising taxes every year is just unconscionable. And the only limitation in Pennsylvania right now is that if you have a certain amount of reserve funds, you have to go to the voters for a tax increase. But there are also a bunch of exceptions to that rule, and you can move money around between funds to make it look like your reserve fund is actually a lot lower than it is. So there's all kinds of games that school districts play to give voters the impression, or residents the impression, that they're pressed for cash, when really that's not the case at all. My favorite, Joel, is when districts say, well, we might not get as much from Harrisburg next year. Well, let me tell you, for the past decade, school districts have gotten more money every single year. And in many cases, including most of the schools in Erie, they're educating fewer kids.
Right.
So fewer kids, more money, and here's the kicker, worse results.
Yeah, I don't think it's been since the Corbett administration that there's actually been an actual decrease in basic education funding. All right, but let's stay on education for a second here. Keystone grants, any kind of educational choice, Does it exist at all?
Yeah, so Pennsylvania has a very robust K-12 education choice program called the Education Improvement Tax Credit.
Okay.
Also the Opportunity Scholarship Tax Credit. So we do have these programs. They serve over 100,000 kids with scholarships so they can afford a school of their choice. A wonderful program. And the money comes from businesses that want to donate, right? So I always think of it this way. You have to pay your state taxes. Would you rather send it to Harrisburg when it's going to be used on who knows what? Or do you want to keep it in your community and give it to a school that's doing great work, educating the next generation of workers? Businesses oftentimes like to use that tax credit program. So it's popular. It turned away over 70,000 applications, the latest data that we have. So it's oversubscribed. Those programs remain untouched in the budget, despite some attacks from House Democrats. They tried to take away about 30,000 scholarships.
Wow. All right, let's talk about some research that the Commonwealth Foundation did about finding $5.3 billion in excess balances in special funds. And let me just tell you what I'm getting at with this. I feel like Pennsylvania continues to fall behind our neighbors when it comes to economic development. Now, don't get me wrong. We're very blessed here in Erie. We've gotten significant RACP funds, probably proportional to our population and tax base. I mean, we're not getting anything like a Philly or Pittsburgh would get. But meanwhile, it's not horrible. We're getting our market house built. We've gotten money for our arenas and ballparks and certainly the schools' extra subsidies have been game changing in the Erie district. But why can't we move more toward a Ohio standing when it comes to economic development? Ohio spending close to $700 million, or is it billion? It must be $billion in just economic development. I mean, the economy is soaring in Ohio.
Yeah, I think what we've seen in the research is that something even more beneficial than economic development spending is lowering tax rates. We have lots of different kinds of zones in Pennsylvania, different subsidies or tax abatements or, privileges of permitting, waivers that one can get in certain zones. And, we've said, well, let's just make all of Pennsylvania a Keystone Enterprise Zone or whatever it is. So let's lower tax rates across the board. Let's, provide regulatory relief across the board. And then you see that kind of growth, because when we look at Ohio, what we see are lower personal income taxes. We see lower business taxes. We see less red tape. And so those are the areas that we're focused on at Commonwealth Foundation. Those are the areas where we think we can have the most success, not just for, Erie or one region of the state, but for the entire state. And I'll give you a specific example. What often happens when they have these corporate development programs is they get captured to one particular industry. Okay. And so right now we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on horse racing in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. It's very important to the people who love horse racing. But most Pennsylvanians, when I tell them about this, they're like, I don't know, why? I'd rather have lower taxes.
Right, yeah.
So, but those funds politically become very difficult to touch, right? Because you have a, concentrated lobby that's very focused on keeping those in place. And over time that grows and grows. So we now have over $2 billion in special handouts. And that just creates, a scenario where it depends on who your lobbyist is, versus how good your business plan is. And we want to avoid that in Pennsylvania.
From baggage claim to pajamas in 10 minutes. Erie International Airport. Fly with ERI.com.
Fly Erie International Airport to Charlotte on American Airlines, your nonstop gateway to the world. Also, we have Breeze Airways flying nonstop to Orlando and Tampa, Florida. Great low-cost carrier providing excellent service to the regional community. Fly Erie International for your travel needs.
Fly with ERI.com.
Get paid to drive. Start a new career behind the wheel at the EMTA. If you are looking for a high-paying and rewarding career with full benefits and paid training, stop by or apply online today with the EMTA. Plus, EMTA riders can now enjoy free Wi-Fi on new, clean, and environmentally friendly buses to travel all over Erie County. Visit ridethee.com for more information.
Get on board EMTA. Get on board EMTA.
At Quickfill, what matters most is that our customers, our communities, and our heroes are taken care of. We start by providing American-made gasoline, which means you can buy local, keeping America and your communities strong. We also support vital charities every year and hold Operation Give Thanks each November to help provide a better future for our veterans and their families. We're proud to support the communities we live and work in, and we're doing our best every day to make our towns a better place. Quickfill, driving America.
I think it's a carve out for the municipalities that are benefiting with that, millions of dollars coming in. Erie County, and Summit Township here in Erie certainly get high benefits from Presque Isle Downs and Casino. You say that the budget avoids the worst case scenario, and it avoids major policy mistakes, including like a MAT transit handout, no minimum wage hike. What? I mean, the minimum wage is almost silly right now. Elizabeth, what's your all's take, and is there a compromise like what Senator Laughlin is advocating, well, just kind of a small incremental increase so that we're getting closer to reality?
Yeah. I think there's so many things we can do to make Pennsylvania's economy more competitive. Minimum wage, I think, is one of those things that politicians like to focus on, but I don't think it's the thing that's most critical to making Pennsylvania competitive, because the minimum wage isn't $7.25 or $7.24. The minimum wage is $0. If it's too inexpensive to employ somebody, they get no wage. So again, we're more focused on those other things that create better conditions for workers, that give employers more flexibility, and less on this minimum wage mandate that, you're right, is more and more irrelevant because less than 1% of workers in Pennsylvania make it today.
Right.
And if you are making it, generally speaking, you're making it for less than a year. And most of the people working it are working part-time. Most people who make that wage are single women without a lot of education. Like, I could go on and on about, all the different demographics. But what we've seen over time is that it really doesn't impact a lot of Pennsylvanians' lives directly. What they'd much rather have is the ability to get that next raise. And too many times, mandates on things like what type of benefits you have to offer. I mean, the paid leave mandate that's being debated in Allegheny County right now is a really good example of this, are making employing really expensive. And that's actually more detrimental than any minimum wage policy. So we're more focused on that. We, rather not mess with minimum wage. We think, employers have pretty much spoken. The minimum wage is actually about $11.50 in Pennsylvania right now.
Okay.
When you do the math. So, let's focus on those things that let people keep more of their hard-earned money.
You talk about the central problem being the structural deficit. What is it as you see it?
Yeah, the structural deficit is about $4.8 billion right now, 4.9, depending on how you round it up or down. That's a big problem. We're going to have to fill that hole at some point, some way. I mean, this isn't Washington, D.C.
Expenses are outpacing revenues is what you're seeing. Okay.
Yes. Right now, that's where we're at. So this fiscal year, we just entered in 2026-27. We're spending about $4.8 billion more than we're taking in recurring revenue. We have to find a way to close that gap. Two ways you can do it. You can lower the spend number, or you can grow the economy. Or the third way that nobody wants to talk about, you can raise taxes, right? So our solution is, let's do both. Let's lower the spend and also do policies that help the economy grow faster. And then that way we can close that gap over time. And the cost is real. If we don't close this gap, if we had let the spending continue at the rate that the governor proposed it this year, you and I and every family of four in Pennsylvania would have had somewhere around a $1,200 tax bill to make the books work. And that's just something we know Pennsylvanians can't afford.
I got to bring up at this time skill games, because that's another policy decision that's the can has been kicked down the road. We've got we've built in our casino revenues into how we function as a county. The skill games are cutting the casino revenues out from under the knees. And I've talked about this a few times recently. It seems like we should be smart enough to be able to extract some income from skill game operators, while still and maybe eliminating some, while still being able to support the American Legions and the VFWs and the clubs that can't exist without that form in their establishments. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. Well, we haven't taken a strong position for and against. We just are pointing out that, hey, look, skill games revenue, the governor projected about $1 billion roughly in the first year. The independent fiscal office is projecting far less. It's something that, needs to be addressed, but it's not going to close the budget deficit. So we just can't rely on it to fix our financial problems. I mean, I don't know if you remember way back when in the Rendell years, the promise was, hey, if we do, legalize gambling in Pennsylvania and have slot machines and table games, we'll fix the property tax problem.
Right, yeah.
Well,
that didn't
not
happen.
so much. Government spending keeps growing. So that's the real issue, is cut the spending. Still games could be part of the conversation. I think there's a lot of good ideas floating around out there. But in terms of fiscal stability, it's not something we can rely on.
We've got Elizabeth here from the Commonwealth Foundation. You say that education spending goes up without accountability. Close to $900 million more dollars being spent on public education. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean it's the same trend. It's continued for years and years and years. So what's frustrating about to Commonwealth Foundation, and what we're trying to draw more attention to, is it's not just what they call the basic education funding, the big chunk of funds that's increasing year after year while we're educating fewer kids, but they're also doing these additional funding supplements on top of it, like layering on additional monies. And right now, the one that was in the news a lot this year was adequacy funding. So there's this very complicated, convoluted formula. You plug in your numbers in for your district and you get a certain amount of adequacy funding on top of your basic education funding.
Wow.
The problem is that funding turns out it's highly political. The leaders in certain chambers tend to get the most of those funds, and it's absolutely not tied at all to enrollment or outcomes. So we're not funding kids, we're funding systems, we're funding adults. And that's the issue we have in Pennsylvania. We need to put the kids first.
I've got just like a minute left. Elizabeth, give us your bottom line. Is this about as good of a budget we can get in an election year, or do you think that they really kind of dropped the ball and just were avoiding pain this year? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an okay budget that protects Pennsylvanians from tax hikes, but we left a lot on the table, things we could have done that would have made Pennsylvania a more attractive place. And while we didn't make our spending problem necessarily worse, we also didn't really do anything to fix it. I'm thankful we continued, things like phasing down the corporate net income tax. We didn't do new minimum wage hikes. We didn't cut funding for charter schools. We didn't cut funding for Pennsylvania's very popular scholarship tax credit programs. But we also didn't do a lot of good things. We didn't lower taxes. We didn't get rid of the tax on electricity that we have in Pennsylvania. So a lot more work to do, as always, and looking forward to continuing the fight.
You've been listening to The Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast from TalkErie.com. Subscribe to our show on your favorite podcatcher and get involved by emailing joel@TalkErie.com.